There are at least 8 Democrats on the Harris campaign's radar for the VP slot. So let's bring in 2 of our NBC reporters who have been covering 2 of the top candidates for years. Brahm, political anchor and reporter at KPNX in Phoenix. He's covered Arizona Senator Mark Kelly's 2 Senate races and his time in Congress. And then there's Mayk, reporter at WCAU in Philadelphia. She's also at the Whitmer-Shapiro rally in Montgomery County. She's covered Governor Shapiro through his own campaign and his time as Pennsylvania Attorney General. Thank you so much for joining us both. And Lauren, I want to start with you. You were at that event. We just heard from Dasha. It's set to kick off in just a few minutes. What can you tell us about how this stacks up and how Governor Shapiro, what he could bring to the Democratic ticket, especially in battleground Pennsylvania, which, of course, we know is that critical swing state?
Well, Gabe, I think if you were to ask the chair of Philadelphia's Democratic Party, he would tell you what Democrats would get by picking Josh Shapiro would be Pennsylvania. He has been one of the Democrats here in the state of Pennsylvania that has been pushing for Governor Shapiro to join the Harris ticket. In fact, the campaign to push for Governor Shapiro as the vice presidential nominee started around the same time that the Harris campaign for president started last weekend. It started quickly. We have seen elected officials come out for him, the Philadelphia Democratic Party, and there has been a move from union officials as well to really hype him up. I was at an event on Friday that seemed like it was part rally for Kamala Harris and part hype rally for Governor Josh Shapiro. They are really pushing for him. I will say we are in Montgomery County right now in the Philadelphia suburbs. This is an area where President Biden sort of supercharged his votes in 2020. Well, Governor Shapiro ran even ahead of where President Biden did in his own race in 2022. And of course, this is his home county, but that was also the case in the swing county of Bucks County, as well as in Erie County in northwest Pennsylvania. So he does have the ability to play well, not just in heavily Democratic areas, but in other more purple and even some red areas as well. I will point out that there is also pushback. There is an ad running right now by a conservative group against Shapiro, saying that he hasn't gotten anything done. There are also some Democrats who aren't happy with some of his positions, for example, on school vouchers. But certainly he is being talked about here in Pennsylvania. Dave?
You know, Lauren, you mentioned some of his strengths. You also just noted some of his weaknesses as well. How do you think the Harris campaign might react to that? And what are some more of the potential weaknesses that you've seen locally? I know there's some question about one of his staffers at some point. Do you think that that will get any, and his response to some allegations against the staffer, do you think that that might be a knock against him in his, you know, if he becomes a vice presidential nominee?
Well, it was something that was brought up actually by the Democratic nominee for treasurer, who tweeted or posted about what you're talking about. There was there were claims against a staffer. There was a settlement, and she posted about it and said through her support with Roy Cooper, Governor Cooper, instead of Shapiro. I spoke with the head of the Democratic Party in Pennsylvania, asked about that post by their nominee. He told me last week he was offended by that. He is backing Shapiro for this. So, you know, that is the kind of thing that does come up in this process. How will the Harris campaign view that? How will they view some of his strengths and weaknesses? We'll see.
Lauren, thank you so much. Lauren Mayk, live for us in Pennsylvania. Lauren, thank you. And Brahm, you've followed Mark Kelly his entire political career. He, of course, won 2 high-profile Senate races in Arizona. So what are his strengths?
Well, his strengths are the golden resume, combat pilot, astronaut. He's married to Gabby Giffords, a survivor of a horrific incident of gun violence, and has since become a champion for gun safety. He has that going for him. He is a moderate Democrat. He's not afraid to push back on Democrats. He plays very well with Republicans. In fact, there were some Trump-Kelly districts here in Maricopa County in 2020 during the presidential elections. Districts where voters went for both Mark Kelly and Donald Trump. So he manages to split the ticket. And of course, he has the border going for him. That's a big problem for Kamala Harris here in Arizona and even across the country, where many voters view the border immigration as the #1 problem. Mark Kelly, again, not afraid to push back. He told the Biden administration that ending Title 42 was, quote, dumb. And just to give you an example of how important that is, the pushback, just this morning, I interviewed Ruben Gallego, Democratic U.S. Senate candidate. I asked him 3 times to name one thing Kamala Harris accomplished when she was given the immigration assignment by President Biden. And each of the 3 times, he didn't have an answer. He went to a talking point. That's a real issue for Kamala Harris, and it's one way in particular that I think Mark Kelly is different from the other potential VPs.
And what are his weaknesses, though? What shortcomings does Kelly have for the Harris campaign?
Well, you haven't seen him on TV much, have you? He does not stack up to a Tim Walz or Josh Shapiro as a speaker. He is fine. He can handle himself, but he's not a speaker. So that's #1. If you're looking for a lights out debate with J.D. Vance, you'll get a pretty solid performance. In the past, during his previous runs for the Senate, there was this issue with this balloon company down in Tucson. He helped get off the ground. Pardon the pun there. They got involved around 2012. The goal was to develop space tourism. That never really happened. It did have a small investment by a Chinese company. That there was a lot made of that. Kelly has said he spent just maybe 30 seconds to a minute talking to an executive there. And at the time, there were also questions about tax breaks this company got from the city of Tucson and how well they were used and whether there was a return on that investment by taxpayers. That kind of melted away under a few fact checks. That's stuff that's been out there in the public domain. We don't know how the vetting is going right now, however.
All right, Brahm Resnik, political anchor and reporter at KPNX in Phoenix. Brahm, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.